Welcome everybody, Bandana Tewari.
I've got this mic. It's working, yes? Thank you for being here, especially the teenagers who struggle to wake up in the morning because they partied last night, but they're here. Of course, it's wonderful to be in green school, and I realize I still hang on to this for good luck, and nice to wear it again. Just talking about the teenagers first, it is true that they work a lot from my house and we bounce off many ideas. A lot of us are doing several projects. And because my Instagram is Behave Bandana, we decided that we're going to call my house because we're all working together. It's called Misbehave and Coexist Ashram. So that's where we all work together. The reason I insisted that the boys come and listen to this talk is because few of them are starting their journey with small capsule collections in the fashion world. Then definitely is. Kason just had begun his journey. Liam is already fully into it. And I think it's very important to understand clothes and fashion in a context that is not taught to us anymore. And they are certainly the ones living the fast fashion life. So it is very important that I start off with a story, which I did, by the way, while I was staying in Ubud when my daughter was in green school, living in Living Light. Jane and Peter, who are the founders of Living Light, are here. And I worked with one intern in Bombay. And this particular story is called The Traveling Jacket. And it spanned about 6 countries because it was a celebration of a region, the Indian subcontinent. So it's Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Maldives, Bhutan, and Nepal. It's actually 7 countries. So the whole idea was, what does creativity mean? What do boundaries mean? This is pre-COVID. And so now we know what boundaries really mean. And so sitting in Ubud, in Living Light, I thought, you know what? There has to be one story that connects all these countries together. And so we started off the journey of this jacket, started off with India. That's Rahul Mishra. And he loves the art of Escher, who's an optical illusion artist. And the workmanship that he does there is very much Indian and a big part of the heritage of embroidery in India. But, you know, the way he talks about it is like all these tiny units make a whole and different countries make a region. So, and then that jacket, he did one part of it and he sent it off. So here he is working with the artisans. And then it goes to Colombo in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, the team was waiting. The jacket arrives with one arm done, and they do the other arm, which was a tribute to their own indigenous craft, and also a tribute to the royal family of Kandy, which is the north of Sri Lanka. And the way they've done the sleeve, it's like the trunk of the Sri Lankan elephant, the sign of royalty and prestige. From there, they pack it up while I'm in Ubud, sending them photos to the next destination, saying, this has been done. Which part would you like to work on? And that gets packed and shipped over goes to Dhaka in Bangladesh. So this is called the Dhakai, which is the reason why Dhaka gets its name. It's again, their indigenous craft. And so she starts using it in the jacket. When it goes to Kathmandu in Nepal, I couldn't find a designer, in all honesty. I could not find a designer because it's a small country. They have designers that sell from India to them. But I found this amazing young lady who's a jewelry designer. And she did the buttons and the belt crafted out of the bones of animals that are sacrificed in the biggest temple called Swayambhunath in Kathmandu. And, you know, it's amazing because she said, we sacrifice these animals for the evils that human beings commit. And she wanted to give dignity back to those animals. And she used artisans in Nepal to create these beautiful buttons and belts. I mean, sadly, it's not too clear, but this is what it is. And then it goes to Bhutan. And it's amazing because to think that the Indian subcontinent is full of color, everyone used the black and white palette. It's only in Bhutan where Chimi used, this is the traditional hira. It's a traditional Bhutanese weave, which by the way, like, very strong matriarchs would wear, and they passed from generation to generation. And so this is the jacket. I know. Oh, I mean, I was just the conduit. This is not my creativity. So I speak on behalf of the designers. So when I had to write the story, I mean, it was great. Like, everything was magical. Like, I felt like I was working in some sort of a, like investigative, like a Netflix show, because I'm calling Bhutan, I'm calling Bangladesh, I'm calling, has the jacket reached? Oh, it's stuck in customs. It was great. So all this happened in 1 month. Now, what people forget is when I wrote the story, and a lot of people don't read stories anymore, right? I thought, what do I say about a jacket like this that spans 7 countries? So I called up each of those designers and said, what is happening in your city or your country on the day the jacket arrived for you to work on? What was happening? If you read the story, it's online, it is heartbreaking. And the reason I'm talking about the social, political context is because clothing is context. So when it reached Nepal, for instance, there was a massive protest on the streets against a very corrupt government, and was led by a doctor, a philanthropist, and a surgeon. And at the crack of dawn, there were 5 activists who shaved their head and had top calligraphers paint on their heads. They tied their eyes because you're blindfolded because you're being led down a tunnel by a corrupt government. So it was symbolic. And they walked across kilometers of a street where ordinary people would guide them as they walked with blindfolds. And that was their act of dissent. When it reached Bangladesh, I get goosebumps every time I talk about this. This wonderful Humaira, who's so excited, waiting with the team. The day the jacket arrives, and she lives in a diplomatic area in Dhaka, a terrorist attack took place literally opposite her home, and 20 people were killed, and they were stabbed. And she had to open her doors with waiters and guests and clients who were sitting in this restaurant. She opened the doors to help them. She was one of the first people to go out and take videos and upload them. And she was so mortified, but so courageous. And I said, honey, you don't need to do this jacket. I mean, it's the least of the things that you should be engaged in. Look what you're going through and look what your country is going through. She said, no, it's precisely the reason why I want to do this. And if you look at the jacket, I mean, the image did pop up earlier. Apart from the wonderful Dhakai stuff that she did here, in the inside of the jacket, she embroidered, she said with tears in her eyes, it says, love is humanity. So this is just a jacket, but it has so much feelings and memories and pain and trials and tribulations of human beings that are put into this jacket. Now, here's the funny part. I probably will get into trouble because we were told not to talk about it, but what the hell, I don't work for Vogue anymore, so I'm going to say it. The one country that's missing from here, which also participated, is Pakistan. So we have this most amazing designer, Zishan Khan, working from Lahore. And he's the one who actually did the peace sign, gave it a little bit of an edge, but done in a very old embroidery of Pakistan. When this magazine, which was like a tribute to the region, went into printing, as Tariq would know, because Tariq is also from India, there was a massive fight between the Indian army and the Pakistani army on the borders of Kashmir, and a lot of Indian soldiers were gunned down. So the whole country just put a stop to anything that came from Pakistan. Imagine a silly story like this we think it's just a story. They all had to, every mention of that country had to come down. And I had written the story, but I was not allowed to talk about this wonderful Pakistani designer and the work that he did. And, I wish I owned the magazine. I didn't. I did sort of fight, state my opinion about it, but there was nothing I can do. So this is just a jacket, but think about this trajectory of human beings making something. So clothes is context. And so for anyone who is interested in fashion, I think it's very important to understand that today we cannot create in isolation. We cannot create without the notion of who's making them. Why is it being made? For whom? Who's profiting from it? Who's being marginalized from it? And we know for a fact that fast fashion has done great disservice to people. There's a wonderful book, if anyone wants to read, by economist, he's a global name. He's not alive anymore, E.F. Schumacher, and he wrote a beautiful book called Small is Beautiful, championing grassroots, smaller industries. And it applies to brands, small brands, because we've been taught by fast fashion that faster is better, more is better, quicker. That novelty, the newness of things is what we've been taught over and over again. So we don't think twice about buying a t-shirt that costs $2, wear it once, and then you shove it in your cupboard, never to be seen again. Or worse, you put it in a bin. And where does it go? It goes into a landfill. And what does that mean to ordinary people like you and me who do not think of this trajectory of waste? Ellen MacArthur Foundation tells us that every second a truck full of clothes are burnt or dumped into a landfill. That's every second. Can you imagine? Just imagine if every second's happening, a truck full, a truck full, a truck full. And you can well imagine what it does to our environment. In fact, it's as much waste that would fill 1.5 Empire State Buildings in a day. That's the kind of stuff we're throwing away. So when you start imagining the volume of that waste, then we've got to sit back and think, what are we doing personally? But how am I contributing to this wastefulness? And one of them is understanding your ordinary clothes, the t-shirt that you wear. What does it take? Let me tell you what it takes for a t-shirt to be made. The cotton is grown in India. Then it's beaten to a pulp in Bangladesh. Then it will go to China, where it turns into yarn, into a textile. Then it goes to another country where they're cut into patterns. Then it reaches maybe Indonesia, and someone will write, I love screen print, I love Bali, and we buy it for $2.99. We wear it once and we throw it. But it travels through that many countries for your t-shirt to be cheap. So how is it cheap? So how do we define what is cheap? How is it possible that we pay so little? We pay so little for an object that has to go through that many countries. Liam, your t-shirt, the one that you're wearing, anyone else, the amount of water it takes, that one t-shirt is your drinking capacity for 2.5 years. That's one t-shirt. So we cannot not be aware of the dynamics of this world where we are taking so much resources so mindlessly. And so every time we say, oh, this is cheap and I can buy it because it's cheap, please remember that someone is paying the price for it. And someone in a faraway country, in a developing nation, especially countries like Bangladesh, the factory people, factory workers sitting there earning pittance with no sanitation, no medical care, no child care, not represented by labor unions, for instance. And they're working for us to buy cheap clothes. So cheap is, I find it a term that is actually vacuous, because what's cheap to me is not cheap to the person who's making it. It costs them his livelihood. So I would rather that people believe that now, especially with COVID, that the idea of buying, and which we must, because we have to support millions of people who are in this trade, and we love beautiful things, we are aesthetes, right? So let's not take away from the joy of being a human being who enjoys other people's creativity. But I think it's so important now, especially with COVID, when this whole business of making t-shirts, for instance, now the flow of the supply chain is just crashed and burned. There was a time when buying a shirt where the buttons come from China, the cotton comes from India, the printing happens in, Hong Kong. Those days are pretty much gone because that supply chain is impossible to manage. So for anyone who's thinking of designing, buying, please buy local, buy what is made in your backyard for now. And please buy things that have value, that have cultural value, that have a story, that have a narrative. I worked in fashion I was with Vogue magazine for 13 years, and I loved my time, and it was over the top, fun and excessive. So I find that, a lot of the times we don't question how we buy things or who makes these clothes, because we just fall into that beautiful haze of beauty with zero responsibility, to look the part, to be trendy. And I have to say, I'm part of the problem, because I'm part of the media. We're the ones who tell you about trends. We're the ones who tell you, if you don't wear polka dots this season, you're not cool. I think, and that's one of the reasons that I resigned, because it bore very heavily on me as a person, not to take away the joy of working with Vogue or anyone who continues to work in fashion. It was just my own personal journey where I thought, you know what, I need to pivot. And coming to Bali, it's easy to pivot into something that is organic and mindful, because that's why we're all here. And, Green School is a big part of, tuning you to become one with this energy that surrounds us, the nature energy, Bali Mama that looks after us. So I think, when I talk about why you should continue in fashion if you want to, then there are things that you have to keep in mind, whether you're a consumer or a creator. Product is not everything. We were told over and over again that product is king. Marketeers tell you that. Ad sales tell you that. Now it's like, who makes these products? So people matter. So not only do the people matter, the process matters. How is it made? Mindful luxury is about time taken to create something, time taken to savor what you buy and that you hang on to it. So you have people, you have process before product. And now it's very important to think about purpose. What are you doing in your business to give back, to change somebody's life? So without purpose, that product is redundant. Beauty for beauty's sake, just for the heck of it. I think, why should we be those kind of creative people? We need to be activists. And that's why I love Gandhi so much, because he asked for personal responsibility, ownership, your own ownership. So how are you going to change the lives of others while you continue to make money and have fun in your journey of life? And that only comes with understanding that you are the custodian of your own wallet, and you are the one who earned it. That money is yours to spend. So know how you're spending that money. We've got so much information at our fingertips now that we have no reason not to research what kind of brand we are buying, what kind of CSR policy do they have, what kind of social impact, community service do they do? Because your age group, they're all expecting to know this from the brands that we buy. So mindful luxury, mindful fashion, for me personally, is taking personal accountability. And that, as I said, is very much a Gandhian way of looking at things. And you can apply that to pretty much everything in your life. personal accountability in the way we look out for each other, what we wear on our bodies, what we put inside our bodies. That is the key to being an activist. So now I always tell everyone, we have no reason not to be, each one of us, to be activists in our lives. It's almost like a birthright. So you don't have to be a creator activist. You can be a consumer activist. You can be a creative activist. It's about standing up for yourself, for other people, and the environment. And that's a lot of talking. Let me just see if I missed any points. Oh, yes. And now that we're in Bali and everyone's into yoga and meditation and cleansing our systems, I love going back into old Vedic philosophy, because we've got a lot of people who've got tattooed on their arms, karma and dharma. And so let's understand what that means to apply it in a way that you're a sustainable human being. So dharma, and this is secular, okay? This is not religious. The secular philosophy of dharma tells you that dharma is your moral compass, where you stand with the choices that you can make. If someone tells you go left or go right, it is my free will, my own dharma, my moral compass that tells me either you go right or left. It's my decision. That is your dharma. Karma is when you take that turn, whether it's the left or right, it's cause and effect. The decision that you make has its own effect. So your dharma can define your karma. So you've got to choose carefully to understand what is my moral fulcrum. If my moral fulcrum, my pillar, my innermost pillar is not to harm the environment, not to hurt other people, not to marginalize, whatever it is, then the decision that I make will define my karma. But that decision is yours to make. So it's not some God sitting up there pointing a finger at you and saying, hey, no, it's free will. And you have that free will to make the right choices. And when I say right choices, it means that it doesn't harm people and the environment. I think I've covered most of it.
Thank you so much, Bandana. So beautiful. It's so beautiful what you said about Dharma and Karma. And yeah, Green School helps us to put us in focus in our Dharma, yes? So we have some time for questions and answers. So if anyone wants to ask questions, just raise your hand and I'll...
Hello. Thank you. That was amazing. I'm just wondering just about that amazing story you wrote. Firstly, when did you write it, and what did it go beyond the fashion world? How?
Well, my idea was that if I could do this in 1 month, sitting in Bali, but sort of coordinating with 7 countries, my proposal was that I would do a jacket every month from different parts of the world. So imagine getting South American countries to come together. Imagine doing it with North American countries. I mean, I thought, and then you have these 12 couture-like jackets by the end of the year. And then we auction it in MoMA, because I've been part of the advisory council there. So I thought, you know what, we need to elevate these stories. And then all the money that would be made would go into the refugee camps that the borders share. But of course, we didn't do that. We just did 1 jacket because it didn't go through. These kind of stories are never amplified in the way, let's say, a Gucci story is amplified, or Louis Vuitton is amplified, because it's just about the economics of advertising after a while. So however much heart and joy and pain and all of it, creativity, all of it's there was a lot of compromising that continues to happen in the editorial world of fashion. But that doesn't mean we stop. And I think now, because again, talking about COVID, people want real stories. People want to connect with the things that they buy, who makes them. So we are primed right now as the editorial people in the media to actually manifest these stories over and over again. And it's funny, all the things in the world, COVID, when it's all about boundaries and borders and not being able to travel here and there, this is how we are traveling now, that you will read a story that spans countries. Sorry, did I answer the question?
Anyone else has a question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just when did you write it?
This was about 3 years back. 3 years back when I was living in Living Light in James Peters, and my daughter was in high school, right here.
Hi, Bandana. It's Luke. So my little daughter Lucia is in middle school, and she started to come home and sort of say that she needs to wear various things. And I'm wondering, where does, the fast fashion, is that where it's starting? And how do you solve it? Because it's not an easy thing to fix. And Lydia thinks there should be a green school uniform to stop all of this sort of pontificating about what you should wear and just get them to go to school in the same sort of things. Do you agree with a green school uniform? Is that going to be something that could solve these problems with the death of the snowy owls?
I'd probably be slammed for this, but I went to a very, very strict boarding school up in Darjeeling, a convent where we had uniforms, and it was very strict. Now, and at that point, we used to call it wearing colored clothes, which was once in 3 months, was like absolute joy. It was felt like you're going to a fair, But having gone through this time with my daughter, who is a teenager, and all the frills and comes with, what do I wear, and the amount of time that is consumed trying to look cool by not looking too cool. That whole idiom that only teenagers understand. I really, in my heart, felt there should be a uniform. And I say this out of, not because I don't think people should have individuality, and I'm the last person who wants to stop anyone's individuality, as the teenage boys know that. I still feel that you take up a lot of mental space thinking about how you should look. I remember interviewing who is now the designer for Christian Dior. She's Italian, first woman to be the designer, female designer for Christian Dior. And I was sitting, face to face with her, and I said, it's funny, the designers themselves seem to have a certain uniform. Like Giorgio Armani will always wear his jeans and his black t-shirt. Yohji Yamamoto, you look at the Japanese designers, they're always in their blacks. And yet they make clothes for a variety of types of people, but they're always in a uniform. So I asked her the question. She said, absolutely yes. I need to have a uniform because I need to free my mind to think of creative ideas. And think about it personally then. How much time do we spend? And we spend a lot of time because, we've forgotten the joy of not worrying about being the trendy person. I mean, I love Maria, who's sitting there. She'll pile on everything and she'll make it work. So that's a very sort of an effortless way of it's not about, do you need to match this with that, blah, blah. You love stuff, and perhaps that's me too. I mean, I'm like a circus act. So yes, I think for a certain age group, I see girls so preoccupied and too preoccupied. It's bad enough now with all these tutorials online, makeup to look natural. The girls are spending 2 hours to look naturally beautiful. I mean, it sort of defeats the purpose, and it takes up your creative space. And yes, to uniforms.
So I'd like to vote against Luke's proposal.
Okay.
Oh, and Kate. That's all I want to say. No, but thanks for being our first speaker of the year, Bandana, and thank you for taking care of the kids, my kid included.
Correct.
And so just 2 quick questions. One is, or one comment and a question. yeah, we try to buy responsibly, and like our daughter goes and she always buys used clothes and things like that. But the two items that I have in my wardrobe, and I am no fashion icon, as you know, and as I have two Nike t-shirts that I have had for probably well over 10 years. I think I bought them in Japan. So probably 15 years I've had these things. And they're workout t-shirts and things like that. And they are exactly the same as they were 15 years ago, as opposed to almost all the other clothes I have, which, you know, wears out in 2 years, 3 years, 4, it doesn't matter what it is. And so is there some balance? And of course, the two Nike shirts are synthetic and everything like that. But so one is there some balance between things that last a long time and things that just get processed quickly? And then the other thing is, I know there's bits of certification that exist in the world around this stuff. I'm so surprised we haven't seen someone come out with like a stamp of approval on certification for fashion, and where then people could, you know what H&M are doing and all these these stores that are just disasters and stuff like that. So longevity of clothing, and then the certification comment.
Well, there are certain certifications. It's just hasn't percolated in the way that it becomes a signifier for you and me on a daily basis. Just like, you know, seeing a tag that we're used to, but seeing a tag that tells you how harmful it has been for, or whatever resources that it's used, that there are certifications. But for a brand to do that, you know, it's a lot of commitment, and kudos to those brands that do it, because they do. There's Patagonia, which is a sporting brand out of the US. You go onto the website, they will tell you the carbon footprint of any garment that you pick up. They will tell you that the rubber comes from a farm in Peru, and you can see the face of the farmer who's extracting the rubber that makes the ski jacket. I mean, that level of transparency and accountability are there in some brands, but now increasingly, thanks to the millennials and the post-millennials, a lot of brands are being beholden to this information. So H&M, I've worked with the H&M Foundation for a while, and you know, while they're trying to do their best, and I have to give them a lot of credit for coming to the table and saying, we need to find solutions and we want to be part of the solutions because it's a fast fashion company. At the same time, they're not doing enough. And so we use a term called greenwashing, which is the brands that we buy regularly that sort of make perfunctory changes, you know, and they will use the word sustain, and it's a trademark. So H&M has sustain, for instance, right? And so you think you're buying green, and then, you know, they put, I mean, it is an effort, I suppose, when you put bins in these fast fashion companies, in the shops, right? And you can go and deposit your old clothes, and well, that's something, but they need to manufacture less. So it's the excess. The brands are burning clothes that no one has worn, that are still price tagged. They're burning them in millions because they are just producing too much. So our effort as activists is like, why are you making so much? Is there a need to produce this much? Because the moment you produce this much, then we're feeding into a system where young children, if you're talking about your daughter, Chris, keep saying, I can buy new. Parents who don't have to think twice about it because it's cheap, it's available, it's fast. And media companies like, you know, my previous job is just telling you that novelty is the truth. Like, it's the heroine of our times, if you ask me, that we have to have newness all the time. So when you're buying things, longevity is based on understanding. Please understand that there's a cultural context to sustainability. If you're going to say, I'm buying an organic t-shirt and I'm being sustainable, good for you. But if you came to India and you saw the amount of water that is required for cotton farming that makes your organic t-shirt, you will see that there are farmlands that have gone arid, that the families there have to figure out, is the well water for them to drink or to farm the cotton? So how on earth is that sustainable? I would rather wear a polyester shirt that lasts, 100 years. So it's the same way in Indonesia. You know, we all say don't use palm oil, and we know why. Monocrops, you know, the orangutans losing their habitat. So understanding the context of what sustainability means is very important. So if I were to go back to India and I bought something made out of polyester that would last me, like your Nike t-shirt, there's a reason why it lasts, because it takes about 300 years for a polyester t-shirt to degrade, then perhaps it is better than to buy a polyester than a cotton shirt, because we are robbing of someone's drinking supply. So I think every country has its unique problems in understanding what sustainability means. And while we are here, what is the context? That we can always research. We all have smartphones. We can always Google, we can ask. I think empowering ourselves and our children with knowledge is the only way forward. If you show your children a documentary, which is called The True Cost, which basically is the true cost of making fashion, that one documentary could be a life changer, because it gives you the perspective of why and how you're buying and what we are doing to the environment. It's a visual medium. It is made, it's captivating, and it gives the kids a context instead of someone just going, sorry, it is distracting because I love the dog too. Anyway, did I answer the question? It's not a stop. Yes, Kate.
Muted.
Well, this light is fine.
It's so interesting. And, you know, you are our teacher here today for the grown-ups, which we love. And I'm so grateful to have you here. And I think it does remind us, and when we think about our younger teenagers and that period of time where there is a lot of pressure and a lot of information coming to them that's not helpful about how to look and how to be and what to wear to be accepted and acceptable. I always have a reaction to the word uniform, just the word. But I also, and that last point that you just made about the documentary and knowledge, and it just reminds me, you know, that education is the most important piece. So I know, you know, courses around the textile industry, around fast fashion, and understanding what it means and allowing children to land in their own place where they establish that moral compass that you talked about earlier is the best gift we can give. And I love, and some of these people are in the room, you know, that by the time they get older, yes, they go through that phase, but then by the time they're in grade 10, they're wearing pajama pants from Pasar Kodok to school. And that's a good thing. And I think we should celebrate that. But thank you for being our teacher here today and reminding us too that that education piece needs to be held on to. Fast fashion, textile industry.
Not teach, because they can consume all this amazing knowledge and wisdom about the industry in the way that they like to consume. There are amazing YouTube videos, there are narratives that are like, so it has to be fun. The problem with sustainability is sometimes it becomes deathly because people talk about it with a great sense of heaviness. And, you know, there's a younger generation, they don't want to engage because it's too heavy a burden for them to carry. But just so you all know, research now shows that the secondhand clothing industry is going to surpass and overtake fast fashion because of this generational shift that's happening, where swapping, secondhand markets, all of that, vintage, and we know this because of the teenagers, they're going back and become a little nostalgic about the 1940s, and they want to shoot in film camera, they want the grainy look. The whole notion of going back to the past is fueling the secondhand industry. And so it is wonderful to hear that it's going to become bigger than fast fashion. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, Denise has a question there. And I love what you said, Kate. And I think education is for sure one of the keys, but we as parents, we hold a big responsibility as well to walk in the talk and not putting the responsibility all over our kids. Just a thought here.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this wonderful talk. It's heart touching. And thank you so much, Kate, and also Carol, what you said now. I just want to add something to that, because I also felt when this came up now with uniform, and I mean, my kids are under 6, so I'm this is 2 girls and 1 boy, so we'll see how they turn out in when they are teenagers. But I also thought, okay, education, and also I think it has a lot to do with sexuality, especially with teenagers. So instead of putting their clothes and everything away from them, I feel more, okay, guiding them, you know, offer maybe more girls circles, or how they feel about this, and more this. Yeah, because there's a reason why they choose this fashion. There's a reason why they focus on this YouTube and everything which there is right now. I mean, back my age, when I was a teenager, it wasn't like this. So it is like this now. So how can we guide them differently instead of taking it away? But okay, and I think especially Green School would be a wonderful place if we could offer maybe more in this direction, sexuality, guiding men. We had actually at the last Green Camp talk that there would be more, how do you say, events where they can guide men into, as a teenagers, into manhood and so on.
Right.
So
I think we're still lucky that we are in Green School and we're in Bali, because imagine the pressures if you're living in a metropolitan city. Imagine being a kid in New York City or in London. I think at least we should be grateful that, you know, we didn't have to subjugate the children to that kind of competitive world order that we see every time we travel in big cities. At the same time, I know it's a tall task, and it is a challenging task for parents to be able to balance individual great personality type, attitude, the vibe, the swag, and have them own it without being wasteful of their time, of their energy. And you know, that's why parents are parents. Like, you know, I just feel like, damn, that's a huge task to balance it out and allow them to flourish, allow children to flourish, and yet tell them when things are not right. So kudos to the parents. I'm done with mine. Zoom calls, that's good enough for me.
Hey, Bandana, there is a question here from Jackie that it's online. And Jackie says, hey, thank you so much for speaking. So what is the fabric you think is the best for longevity and environmental? What should we be buying more of in terms of fabric? Thanks.
But ideal situation, but I don't think it's allowed in Indonesia, it's hemp. It's from the marijuana plant. It is the most sustainable. Nothing is sustainable 100%. We as human beings have a carbon footprint from the time we are born. And so the idea of what is really sustainable doesn't exist. But which are the fabrics that can do least harm? Hemp is on the top right now. You have bamboo fabric, you have tencel, which is made out of wood pulp. So again, a wood has the width, you have to cut the wood, right? I mean, and you have to cut a lot of wood to have this fabric. But right now you think about what's the sort of the least harm. So it certainly shouldn't be polyester, should not be your choice, because it is a fossil fuel based, it's oil. You're wearing oil on your skin, basically. So hemp is definitely what I would recommend young designers to consider at a time when, you know, I think it's just going to be made more and more available. So I know, I have a few things in bamboo. So bamboo, well, it's supposed to be very, what do they call it? It takes a lot of water in the making of the bamboo fabric. So it depletes the water resource, and especially in countries where you really need the water for drinking, not for making cloth. Having said that, now with so much innovation and research and development that's happening, you can get cloth that is made out of crop waste. There's fabrics made out of algae. There's fabrics made out of mushroom. There's vegan leather that's made out of the byproduct in a vineyard where they take the skins of the grapes after they've been crushed for the juice, and that's turned into leather, and it's fine leather. So as you know, I think when these innovations start scaling up, and they're not being done by, you know, little design students, these are huge companies that doing our research and development, they're biochemical engineers, they're textile experts. So I think once these things become more available to designers especially, then it'll be available to us to make a choice. This is the kind of fabric or vegan leather that we want to use.
Yeah, no, can I add one thing on the fabrics choice, that it's also good to look at that it's not mixed fabrics. Right. If you think about the recyclability, yeah, which is not here yet, right, but hopefully if you'll wear our clothing 10 years, we will, yeah, have the option. A bit of a different topic, but given your background in media, I work a lot with circular innovators like Louis, our common acquaintance, but also who social enterprises that work in circular textiles, either on recycling or brands. And especially on the brand side, those who make products, it's very hard for them to kind of, well, they have Instagram, etc. They use the influencers, and sometimes they're in magazines, which is a big like, woohoo, we made it to the magazine. But would there be a way to think of a platform, given your background in media? I'm just thinking they need so much more exposure and they're getting glimpse of it. Just wondering what your thoughts are. I
think the old system has changed, right? So whether you look at all these big magazines, most of them are shutting down because it's just not sustainable to have a business where every month an issue comes out. Think about this. Let's say Vogue magazine in 30 countries. Each of those countries are making per month, right? Because every month they're creating the content. Every month there's a new magazine. That world is defunct and finished. There is no way that that can be sustainable anymore. So that leads to the idea of what can media do for young designers who need a platform. I think they couldn't be in a better place if to be the orchestrator of their own journey, because they're on social media. You can have your online boutique. You can create your own website. You can sell on Instagram. So the idea of being in a shop, the old school way of like, oh, I need to be in 10 shops all over the world. I think now it's you make enough inventory that you can sell to your tribe. You don't create an excess. You put mindful creativity in your fashion journey, whether you're a consumer or a creator, and don't have the paradigm that existed and did not work till this point. So magazines themselves, media companies themselves know that now, that, you know, that's why so many of them have shut. And so I think you can be the custodian of your own brand if you keep it small. And going back to the book I was referring to by E.F. Schumacher, an economist who was influenced by Gandhi's philosophy. Small is beautiful talks exactly about that. That the idea of bigger is better is a fallacy. You can have a business, a successful business, where you create things of value, that you charge enough money so that in the entire supply chain, everyone is paid with dignity and the labor is respected, and you make money with joy. And so the idea that you have to be big and you've got to be in 20 countries, I think that's bullshit. Sorry.
Thank you. So my question is, I feel that we're kind of in this bubble where we're only around people that think just like us. And so we feel like, yeah, everyone or mostly is trying to use bamboo, linen, you know, all of these eco dyes, very mindful of what they buy. But then if that was true, if that was true, we wouldn't have platform like Shein that's like booming. And I think 70% of the inventory was like created less than 3 months ago. And so we, at least in the circle, I think that we all interact is, we do think that this generation is the answer, even though I don't think it's right to put all of this on their shoulders.
But then the reality, I think, is showing otherwise in the like with this Shein platform. So what was your thought about all of
Well,
that?
I have to say, I am a bit of an optimist. If you asked me what sustainability was even 5 years ago, I wouldn't have known. You know, I was so busy working in high fashion that it wasn't been part of my vocabulary. And if you look at the generation that is marching on the streets, protesting against, we don't even call it climate change anymore. We call it climate crisis, right? It is the youth, the generation that are completely aware of the degradation the environment is bearing the brunt for because of our greed. And by the way, when I say our greed, they're the ones who are going to struggle in an environment where we as adults have actually, destroyed because of our consumerism that was fueled over generations, right? The consumerist agenda that is just buy more houses, make it bigger. How many cars do you need? You know, today, just look at COVID, it doesn't matter even if you have 5 houses and 3 yachts. You pretty much have to stay in one place. So I think the generation, and I can see the anxiety because they don't want to grow old in an environment where they have no idea if they're going to have proper air to breathe or forests. I just feel that they may not announce it because they're so busy being cruel, but I think that they are cognizant that their adulthood could be in an environment that is drastically different. And so the change will happen, that they will make change, they will hold companies accountable, you know. It is this generation that is into clothes swapping and secondhand clothing and what have you. It is that generation that's defining it. So I have to say, I know that massive changes have to be made. Companies have to be held accountable, especially companies that are billion-dollar companies. Zara, the owner, is the 7th richest man in the world. And they still penny pinch when they have to pay factory workers in Bangladesh. And yes, so we have no choice but to hope for the best with the new generation.
I have one more question, actually. So, you know, I have my own brand as well in fashion, and inventory, it's annoying to hold because you sell it and you don't sell it. So what do you think about having on-demand or made-by-order brands? Like, what's your view on that?
I love it. I love the fact that that's part of your vocabulary, on-demand, made-to-order, where you already have a buyer, so you know what you're going to make without creating an inventory which you're going to throw away or be wasteful. It is the way forward, Leon, that you can have a margin that where you make profit because you make it with a sense of integrity, value, quality, all of it. So you make your margin, right? So it's a question of, if you're going to make the same amount of money selling 100 pieces, as opposed to, like, you could make the same money with 10 pieces, but they're made so valuably. When I say value, I mean value in terms of the quality, the longevity. Then why do you need to make an excess? So yes, by demand, it's called made to order. I think that's the way forward for small brands to thrive successfully.
Having been a manufacturer of garments here in Indonesia since the 70s, yes, absolutely produced to order, but you still have to take a position on your fabric because you can't produce to order if you don't have your fabric. So yes, you still have to have a position.
Right.
Thank you for that, Bandana. First, just a word of support for school uniforms. I support it. Happy to argue with anyone offline. This might be a simplistic question. I think that to take the idea forward to a large number of people that one has to be responsible, about how we choose what we wear and how we buy. It would be useful to have a 3-point. Can you give me a 3-point plan of action? Follow this. I have a daughter who only buys recycled clothes, only buys vintage clothes. And she says reuse, recycle.
Correct.
Right?
Buy
So
less.
is there a
Number one,
three-point
buy
plan?
less. We don't need to buy that much. Buy things of value, which means if it's valuable, then you hang on to it, or you'll pass it on to someone that you love. That means it won't disintegrate after you wear it 3 times. So buy less, buy things of value. Anyone want to pipe in for the third one? Come on, Tom.
Keep things away.
Yeah, that's it. Well, exactly. Swap. You know, and you guys do this all the time. But the girls do it.
You can renovate your clothes as well.
Yes. Reuse, recycle, repair. We've forgotten how to repair things. So we throw away things the moment there's a little hole. We lose a button, that's it. You don't even look at that shirt again. Repairing is key to looking after your clothes. You know, as there's a saying, loved clothes last. We need to give that narrative back to our clothes. We wear it every day. We have stories with it. My mom's shawl, my grandmother's sari. Let's bring that value back into clothing. And a big part of it is repairing, because repairing means like repairing a relationship. You show love and you show kindness. And if you were walking around naked and that was a choice, you wouldn't even have this conversation. But we wear clothes every day of our lives. So let's not take it for granted.
And we have one last question there.
Hi,
Yes,
Bandana.
Monica.
Thank you for, inviting me to come here. And I actually, the young boy here who was asking about solutions if we could manage inventories through.
Liam, are you listening?
Yeah. Hi, this is for you actually. I've been in this industry for 28 years. I've been through manufacturing, looms. I've got a lot of things happening all across. And so I'm in close touch with Bandana. Now, this classmate of mine went through the same struggle through these last 28 years. And in the last 10 years, he has developed an app called as Tailor Tech Solutions. Take a look at that. It will help you to understand how you could do custom-made products and yet manage your inventories. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Well, that's amazing. I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Bandana. And
thank you.
You made me think really, I mean, my mom, when I was, until I was like maybe 12, my mom used to have a business and she used to make clothes. She has a little confection. I don't know how to say that in English, but it's so funny because my mom, my entire life, I mean, she always preached for this needs to be quality clothes. And I have this for 30 years. I have this for 40 years. And now when I look to my wardrobe, I see so many of clothes that she made at that time that I still, have and use. And has this emotional value.
Yeah. And they're probably all handmade. Like, this is where culture becomes so important, right? I wouldn't dream, and neither of you, I can't imagine anyone would throw away a beautiful Sumbani's ikat that you bought, right? I mean, there's no chance. Just like Tariq, who do we know in India who'd ever throw away a sari? It's unheard of. It sounds like, it's an act of that you would not commit. We don't throw away. And why is that? Because it comes with the heritage, the provenance of culture. So we need to bring back that value. It's easy for me to throw away a t-shirt because what value does it have to me? What storytelling does it have? But for me to throw away a batik from Bali, a ikat from Sumba, a sari from South India, for any of us, a beautiful piece from Mexico. I mean, Jane, you've been collecting textiles all your life. There's no chance you'd be ever throwing that away, right? And why is that? Because you're literally carrying the story of life and love and care, in a fabric. And so I think we need to bring back that sentiment to clothes.
Thank you.